Hello, hello. Are we live? Yep, looks like that's working. All right, welcome back to my font project. So in the last stream, before the last stream, we were only drawing outlines of glyphs. And then the last stream, we finally started to fill in those outlines. We had a small bug, or maybe a not so small bug at the end of the day yesterday. And if I bring up GIMP, I can show that. So here's this Noto Sans file that we just generated, or specimen. It's a specimen of the Noto Sans font. Man, I have too many windows open. So let's look at what we did yesterday. So we're filling in the glyphs, but it's a little bit fucked up. And I realized what the problem is. So you can see these artifacts that shoot off all the way to the right and start filling like every pixel in the horizontal line. So we get one on this lowercase a, we get a couple on the uppercase a, and then again on this lowercase a. And I think that's it for this. Well, no, there's something here too. Yeah, so the B, there's also one that starts in the lowercase b. Notice it only happens in glyphs that have multiple contours. Like it happens in glyphs that have a hole. Like the A has one contour for the outer part, and then it has a second contour for this hole. And it's the same thing with the uppercase A. The uppercase A also has a hole in it, and the lowercase b has a hole in it. All of my single contour glyphs are good. The lowercase n is good. The numerals 1, 2, and 3 are good. 4, again, we have a hole, and that has these artifacts that shoot off to infinity towards the right. Not every glyph with multiple contours has this bug. The lowercase o is fine, and that has multiple contours. But everything that has one contour is good. The only glyphs that have bugs are subsets of glyphs with more than one contour. The problem is that I was conflating glyphs with contours at the end of the stream. So not every glyph has one contour. Even simple glyphs can be composed of multiple contours. So I can prove to you that we're in a clean state here. I might as well clean out that directory. I have no changes. This is the commit that we did yesterday. Again, no changes. So then I can build and run again. Hey Connie, how's it going? Welcome back to the stream. So that just reran and it regenerated this artifact. We already have it loaded, so this is what you just saw. Actually, my build directory now, it really only has one ppm file because this is the ppm that we just generated. I had some other stuff left over in there before I ran this clean command. So now that's cleaned up. So the problem is that I'm conflating glyphs with contours. We have this thing with the deferred point where we don't know how to fill the first colored pixel until we fill the final colored pixel of a contour. So we call that the deferred pixel, and then we don't fill it until after we're done looping through all of the other points. And then we fill that or not depending on the winding increment of the final point that's filled. So we have this variable winding not that tells us what the winding number increment of the previous point was. Just did some uni work, now have to clean up the flat. Yeah, uni work. Isn't it like the end of the semester? Or are you finishing soon? Around here, the Pennsylvania State University, they finished like about 3 weeks ago. They had their graduation. So we have this variable winding not that tells us what happened on the final point. Here's where we set the deferred pixel coordinates. And then at the end of the loop, this is for splines, at the end of the loop, we finally assign a winding number to the deferred point. The problem is I put this outside of the contour loop, but a glyph can have multiple contours, so what I need to do is put this inside the contour loop. I think I need some comments here. So this loop ends contours. In a language like C, you get like curly braces at the end of a loop, and then your text editor can easily help you jump from the end of a loop to the beginning of a loop. We don't have that in Fortran. We end a loop with end do, and it's, other than your indentation level, if you're very neat with your indentation level, you can find it, but other than that, there's not really anything to help you find where this loop starts. So when my code starts to get long, like a couple hundred lines like it is here, I like to start putting comments that say, what was the start of this loop? So this is the loop through contours, and then this is the loop through points in the contour. So I want to fill my deferred point inside of the contour loop, but after the point loop. So I want this in here, and then I also have to initialize something differently. So where is that? I can't remember. Yeah, it's winding not. I also have to initialize this inside of the contour loop the same way that I initialize first and defer inside of this loop. So if I do that, I think it should help. I think I might have one more small change that I have to do. But let's see what that does by itself. Seems like that fixed everything. I think there's one other small change that I have to make. This first year, from September 1st to July 19th. Okay, those sound like long semesters. Do you get like a really long break around Christmas? Around here, there's like a 3-week break for Christmas and New Year's and winter holidays. Not to be like religiously specific, it's not just Christmas, it's for everybody. So that seems to work. All the lowercase letters are good in this font. I haven't totally analyzed my logic. I think it's possible that defer might be false at the end of all this. So I think I also only want to fill the deferred point if defer is true. So I'm going to add that condition. And then I think we're good. So this will run. And that looks the same as it was. And we can also try some other fonts now. We can try like all of the fonts that I have installed with Windows. Yeah, so this script should run, and even if it crashes on some things, it should keep running. I don't have bounding box checks for my winding number canvas, so it does crash for some of these. But we can start generating a bunch of things. Now you can see PNG files and PPM files getting populated in here. So we can look at some of those while it's running. Yeah, and I don't see any more of those artifacts. There's one really funky looking font. There's a crash, by the way. There's one really funky looking font called Gigi. I want to test that one specifically. On Magic. Magic is, oh yeah, it's .exe, because I'm in WSL, and the .exe is significant inside WSL. So there's gg.png. This is a pretty funky font. I would go so far as to say that it's ugly, except in very certain special use cases. But there are like crazy lines all over the place. I think if I can render this font without any artifacts, then that's a pretty good indication that I'm doing things correctly and I've worked out all the bugs, because there are lines all over the place. Like look at the tail on this G. It's crazy. 2 weeks in winter and 6 weeks in summer. Oh, that's not a lot of off time. In school, the summer holidays are always June 1st to August 31st, but uni isn't school anymore. Yeah, we get a lot more time off in America. Uh, the semesters start at like the end of August and they end in early May. So you get 3 or almost 4 months off for the summer break. And then there's like a 3-week break around Christmas too. So we're pretty lazy around here. All right, now I was a little bit misleading. I've actually already done this. So you saw me code it up here. And these are the changes that fixed this bug. We moved this initialization inside of the contour loop. Because I was like conflating glyphs with contours, I was only doing one deferred pixel at the end of the glyph, but I have to do that for every contour in the glyph. So we moved this initialization inside this loop, and then we moved this thing at the end inside that same loop. But I've actually already done this. You can see I'm in a detached head state. So let me just check out the commit where I already fixed this off stream. Because I got impatient yesterday. I was working on this for like 3 hours, and then I just couldn't stop myself. I had to go back and fix the bug off stream. So let's stash what we just did, and then let's check out that latest commit. It's not master, it's main. Yeah. So yeah, this is the commit that I did off stream where I fixed the same bug. And now I should be able to run again. This is like the equivalent of when you're watching a cooking show on TV and they're like, all right, now let me reach under the table and pull out something that we prepared ahead of time. This is what I'm doing with this commit. But I showed you how it's made, so I'm not really being deceptive at all. And yeah, that's it. That fixes the bug. I actually like shorter breaks because more uni students aren't kids anymore. They have to understand that life isn't always just fun and games. Also, I study for free and get money from the state and don't have to take student loans, so I don't complain. I think student loans actually don't exist here as far as I know. For me, university was so much easier than high school. Like when I was in high school, I was doing all kinds of extracurricular activities like sports and music and homework all the time. And on top of that, I was in school for like 8 hours a day. So I basically had very little free time. And then once I got to college, it was like you go to 2 or 3 classes a day, you do a little bit of homework, and that's all you have to do. I had so much free time all of a sudden in university. Like aside from the breaks, like the workload was just a lot lower for me at least. Uh, I think some people don't operate as well independently and they have a harder time at university. But for me, like I suddenly had a huge influx of free time. Yeah, student loans are crazy in the U.S. Like a lot of people take out student loans, and then the politics flip flop all the time. They're like, we're gonna forgive student loans, and then the courts are like, no, you can't forgive student loans. So like nobody knows whether they owe a bunch of money or not. Like it's totally up in the air. In school, I never did shit. Okay, so we have that bug fixed. The unit tests are failing. That's not what I wanted to run. Yeah, so the unit tests are failing because we used to not fill in glyphs, so the unit tests aren't expecting the glyphs to be filled in. So that's one thing that I want to do, fix the unit tests. That's easy. I also want to try to optimize this a little bit because you saw the glyphs were shooting off all the way to infinity. And that's because I'm filling up the entire canvas for every glyph. So when I render this N, I don't just check the pixels around the N. I check the pixels in the entire canvas and scan everything just for this one glyph. Then when we get to the next character, I do that all over again. So this is really not efficient from a performance standpoint. So I think I want to optimize this to only fill in like the bounding box of each glyph. And we should get like the same results. It might round things differently, so it might shift by like a pixel in one direction or the other. But yeah, that's the main thing I want to do today. But I think we're like wrapping up this project, so I'm planning to slow down with the streaming, at least for this project, and maybe in general. I'm thinking about slowing down the streaming a little bit. But yeah, we're getting towards the end of this project. I might continue to tinker with it off stream, but like I've accomplished the major features that I wanted to do for this. Yeah, so there's not all that much more to do. All right, let's fix these unit tests. So I actually want to look at the diffs. And we have diffs. I want to clean this out again. So now this only has the diffs. It doesn't have like files for all 500 Windows fonts. And then I want to convert those ppms to PNGs so that I can look at them more easily. Okay, so this is the current test specimen. And what the test is expecting, filling in glyphs are a new feature that we just did. So the tests are only expecting to see an outline of the glyph. So we can look at the test diff side by side. And you can see that it highlights a bunch of stuff in magenta. Basically, it's highlighting the differences. So the outlines are the same. The outlines are still black. Those pixels haven't changed. And like the background hasn't changed, but like everything inside of the glyph is now a difference, and that's why the tests are failing. As it should. So my tests should pick up any small differences, even if it's just 1 pixel or something. And this is quite a lot more than just 1 pixel. But like the outlines look the same as they used to be, so I'm going to approve these tests, and I'll do that by just copying my generated test output to the expected test output. I just have those ppm files in different folders. So that's computer modern. We should at least look at the other tests. I don't just want to approve tests without looking at them to make sure that they're sane. Yeah, so there's Ubuntu. This is the font from Ubuntu. Noto Sans. You can also see we can handle non-Latin characters. I forget what this says. I think it says like conference or something random. this is Garamond, Computer Modern, Bodoni. I think that's all. Yeah, so the rest of the tests are like not really font tests. And these are the diffs again. So the only differences are inside of the contours. I think that looks good. I think I'll approve those. So I can do that by copying. Basically Bodoni, I have 5 that I need to copy. So Bodoni and Computer Modern, not PNG. Okay, so I copied the wrong file for Bodoni. PPM, not PNG. Then Garamond, Notosans, and Ubuntu. I think I have 1 extra file. Yeah, I copied this accidentally. I want to delete that. And now the test should pass. So let's get that committed and pushed so that these tests run remotely as well. Let's confirm that these run remotely and pass remotely, because this should be finally a passed unit test again. We made a commit here, and I said that this was going to be the last test that passes for a long time. And it's been like nearly 24 hours. So I think it's time to have a passing unit test again. Oh, I also want to have a badge. If you look at some of my other repositories, I guess this is a good one. Does this have it? Yeah, so this has a badge in the README that says whether the tests are passing or failing. So I want to copy that. Did this pass? Okay, it did pass on Ubuntu and Windows. Mac is still running. Let's add that badge to the README. Now this is referencing the Syntran repository, so I want to change that to cali, and the rest can be the same. This is how you render a PNG file in Markdown. You have like empty text, and then for the link, you just have a link to the URL of, well, this is an SVG file, it's not a PNG file. And I think I also do that for, yeah, like this cali graphic. And I have another demo graphic below that this is rendering a PNG. So it's the same thing for the CI badge. That's just how you render an image in Markdown. So yeah, I think I can commit that. And it can be slow to load. I've noticed like frequently that I'll run the test and okay, yeah, so that commit is just running now. The last one should be done, but there can be some lag of up to like a few minutes between when your test finishes and when this badge finally updates. And like, I don't really know how browsers work. I think sometimes browsers just cache that and you have to like refresh the page or do something more extreme to get it to refresh for real. Right. Yeah, but now we have a badge, and then I want to pull that locally because I committed that directly in GitHub. All right, now let's try to optimize these bounding boxes. Also, I think that's okay as is. I think I have some to-do notes that I can clean up. Yeah, I had like visualization debugging where I was marking the entrance points and exit points with like red and green. So I think I can remove this stuff. Maybe I'll just comment this out for now. I don't feel super confident. I think I haven't even looked at all 500 specimens. So I have about 500 fonts on Windows. I've looked at a lot of them, maybe like a couple hundred, but I haven't looked at all 500. So I'm not 100% sure that I've worked out all the bugs. So I think I'll leave this in here, but commented for now. I know there was something, maybe it was in my main program. I was like looking at my code last night and I saw like a to-do note and thought like, oh, I've already done that. I need to delete it. But I can't remember where that is. So yeah, let's just get on with the optimization and refactoring. So inside draw glyph, we have a bunch of code here where in this case the contour is going up. Like the current pixel y coordinate is greater than the previous pixel y coordinate. And then we have the other case where we're going down, where the y coordinate is decreasing. Also, like the y coordinate, well, the axis is going down. That's the convention that I'm using. So when I say down, sometimes I mean up. So sorry that's super confusing. It's like the OpenGL axis conventions. But yeah, we have the separate branch here where like the only thing that is different is the sign of IP minus IP naught. And then there's a bunch of stuff in here where like we have a -1 in this branch, and then in the other else if branch we have a +1. So we can actually unify these by using the sign function, the sign function. I think I looked that up yesterday. Yeah, so it's kind of annoying in Fortran. It takes 2 arguments. Yeah, so it returns the value of A with the sign of B. And that's kind of annoying. I want a sign function that only takes 1 argument, so I think I'll define my own wrapper around this function. Because I don't want to get confused about like which argument is which. So let's make that wrapper function. I don't know what to call this. We could call it sign1 because it always returns something with a magnitude of 1. I think I'm going to call it sign underscore because I've started using that as a convention where I want to have something but it's already a Fortran keyword. So I just add an underscore so that I'm not clashing with the Fortran keyword. Let's just call it X. So the Fortran intrinsic is polymorphic. Like B could be integer or it could be real. This is basically a polymorphic function. The arguments can be different types. I think I'll just do it for integers for now. But I might want to have like separate functions because to do polymorphism in Fortran, maybe there's a better way, but I would usually just define two separate functions, like one for integers and one for reals, and they would both have to have different names. And then you can have like an interface that uses the same name for both of those functions. But for now, I think I'll just do integers only. Is that the way I want it to work? The value of A with the sign of B. Yeah. They don't even tell you what the results of these are, like with a comment or with like console output or anything, that they just expect you to run this yourself. But I think this is what I want. I think I want the arguments in this order because I always want +1 or -1. I don't want some other value. So I think that's the function that I want. And then we should be able to use this to unify these two branches. I want to see if that compiles there. I forgot a type. So the type is integer. All right, now let's use that function. I also want to reduce the level of indentation here. So I want to take this stuff outside of this condition. Because like this thing is kind of independent from the rest of this code. But yeah, let's use sign first. So we're going to have a variable called windInc. We already have windInc not for the previous winding increment and windInc d for the deferred winding increment. So let's just have regular wind_inc. I think my sign conventions are, first of all, I want my function, not the intrinsic function. I think my sign conventions might be a little bit backwards. Actually, it doesn't matter. So we can put a minus sign in here now, and then this will be winding, because this will be -1 for this condition. And then once we get it all working, we can take out this minus sign, and it shouldn't matter which convention we use as long as we're consistent. Like it doesn't matter whether you have plus and minus or clockwise or counterclockwise in the contour ordering, as long as it's consistent. So I think I picked the backwards one, so I have to have a minus sign in here, but then I'll take that out later. Now, everywhere that we have a +1 or a -1, we can replace it with this variable. Except not here, this is just an index, that one's fine. Oh, yeah, sorry, you can't see all of that. I need my always on top window. All right, now I can't see what you can't see. Okay, so that's half of it. Let's see if that still gives us the same results. That looks good. Let me get rid of that minus sign and show you that it's fucked up, because it does make a difference. Essentially now we have one sign convention for this thing and then a different sign convention for the other condition if we take out that minus sign. So this should be totally wrong. It's going to fill in like almost everything, I think. Or it might fill in nothing. Yeah, so it filled in almost everything. A lot of the Q is correct. Somehow we still got the whole. Oh, because the Q is all splines, and we're only changing the code for line segments right now. So yeah, that's pretty fucked up. That's not what we want. So let's put that minus sign back in. And that's like a quarter of the code, because we have this condition. We did that. We have the other condition, which we still have to update. And then that's just for lines. Then we still have like twice the amount of code for splines as well. So we've done like a quarter of the changes that we need to do. So this needs to be wind ink. And this needs to be wind ink. And this needs to be wind ink. So that should be like half the code that we need to do now. And we should still get the same correct result that we were getting 2 minutes ago. So that looks good. That's lines. Now let's do it for splines. Actually, let's just unify these branches. So I think what if it's 0? What? I need to see what this program does, because like, what if it's 0? I don't understand. Because I think sign, does C have this as a built-in function? No, I don't want the copyright sign. I want the C programming language and the sign function. Come on, Google. You can see my search history. You know I'm looking for this. So it's not built in. Does this exist in C++? Because if there's some convention out there, I want to kind of... Okay, so that Stack Overflow post was for C++. Yeah, so I would like this to return 0 if it's 0. I don't want +1 or -1. But like this, I think it always returns +1 or -1, and if it's 0, it returns -1. At least that's what I understand from that description. Let's run this test program and see what it actually does, because it seems a little bit weird. Oh no, it returns positive if it's 0. So yeah, this is not what I want. So this is kind of weird. Like it casts a boolean to an int, and it casts another boolean to an int, and then subtracts them. I don't want to do that. Okay, so those Stack Overflow posts didn't help me at all. What I was going to do is just if x equals 0, I need a then. I can't make this one line. Return. Yeah, so that seems as good to me as any of the Stack Overflow suggestions. And I don't want to rely on weird logical to integer casting. I don't even know if that works the same way in Fortran as it does in C, or if it works at all. So I think this is what I want. And now we can just check. If winding is not 0. And then these branches are the same, so we can just delete one of them. So if winding not equals 0, then otherwise don't do nothing. We're just going to delete the else if, and there's not going to be an else branch. Because, yeah, I guess I don't have a good way to illustrate this. I could sketch something out in Paint, but I kind of don't feel like it. I think I explained how this algorithm works enough in the last stream. So if you want to know what the hell these winding numbers and winding number increments are, watch the last stream. So I think this should still work. Let's see. Nope. Did I get my convention backwards? That's equally wrong, but in a different way. Yeah, what the hell? First of all, I want to keep that comment, but I want to undo a bunch of stuff that I just did. So I think it worked at this point. Yeah, so that worked. Let's put my comment back. Is there like a hard-coded 1 that I forgot? This is an index. That one is okay as 1. Same there. What's wrong with this? So this works, right? So that should be the same, right? And that should be the same. Now, this block of code is identical to this block of code. So I should be able to unify these. And say, let's be extra safe. Let's see if abs windink equals 1. Because maybe my sign function is wrong. Why is that wrong? I guess those two blocks of code are not identical. Okay, spot the difference. What is different between this and this? Oh, it's the sign of this condition. So do I want to check if they're, I think I want to check if they're not equal. Not quite. Yeah, because there's the case where this could be 0. So this is a little bit of a weird way to do it. But I think this should work. There we go. And so I only want to do this if the current winding increment is 1 and the previous is -1, or vice versa. If either of them are 0, I don't want to do it. So I only want to do it if these cancel out and sum to 0. So I think that makes sense. And then instead of using absolute value here, I can just check if it's not 0. So check if that's not 0, and this should be the same thing. There we go. Seems okay. I'm just going to delete this. I want to leave in the debug red pixel in case I find some other bug later that I need to visually debug this like I did last stream. So I'm going to leave that in there for now. But then what we just did here for line segments, we need to also do this for Bezier curves. Yeah, let's do this one step at a time. I also want to change the indentation level and like refactor the way that these are branched. But for now, let's just copy and paste this and like do this as one commit. So let's paste that here and then delete the old stuff. This is not dry. Well, we're in the process of drying this up. So we used to have twice as much code, but now we've unified what used to be 2 branches into this single branch, which only happens if the winding increment is non-zero. So we've cut down the amount of code in half, but we still have this for splines, and then we have it pasted somewhere else for line segments. I don't think there's really a good way to unify that, so I might just kind of leave it like this. A little duplication is better than the wrong abstraction. So you shouldn't just unify things because you can and because you're like rigorously following the dry methodology, because you shouldn't just apply dry everywhere. You should only do it when it makes sense. And I don't think there's a good way to unify these, so I'm going to leave this little bit of code copied and pasted. And it's only in 2 places. If it was in like 3 places or more, I might want to dry it up regardless of how hard it is. But I think this is the right way to develop. At least for me. That's my personal preference. If you have a different preference and it works for you, that's fine. Programming methodologies aren't supposed to be fascist. You can do what works for you. So that looks okay now. Now we have this ugly minus sign. And now that we have everything unified, we can get rid of this minus sign and the other one. As long as we get rid of both at the same time, it should still be the same. Yeah, so that worked. Basically now, like, we used to have 1s inside of winding numbers of 1 in here, and now we have -1. But it doesn't matter, it gets filled in as long as the winding number is non-zero. So we switched from one convention to another one, but it still fills glyphs in the same way. So that's one font. Let's run our unit tests. Everything passes. So I think that can be a commit. I like to clean up untracked files or like move them somewhere where they're not tracked. Yeah, so this indentation is ridiculous. Like the get diff doesn't even, it's not even readable because all of this is indented and then like the line starts here and immediately wraps. So I want to reduce this indentation a little bit in the next commit. Going to need a coffee refill eventually. Not quite yet, but soon. Okay, Ubuntu passed already. So you can see this does all the same fonts remotely that it does locally. Bodoni, Noto. Notice it does Noto sans regular and italic. This specimen only has regular upright Noto sans. But if I look at one of the test results, do I have that as a recent file? No. So I have to discard this and then open this separately. Yeah, so we have regular Noto sans here for this line, and then this line is italic. So it's actually doing two different fonts from the same typeface in one test, and it does that for a few different fonts in each test. And I want this other one open in a separate tab. Okay, there we go. Okay, yeah, so this is done. And next I think I want to fix this indentation a little bit because there's too much nested logic. This is kind of optional. This makes a difference of points that are on the contour. So points that are inside the glyph by at least 1 pixel, those always get filled. But for points that are on the edge of the glyph, that are like on the contour, this can make a difference of whether it gets filled or not, because that winding number might be 0. I want to keep that there for consistency. And I think the TTF spec says that you are supposed to fill points that are exactly on the boundary. So I think this is the correct way to render fonts. So I want to keep that. I don't want to totally delete it. If I could delete it, I could simplify this even more, but I don't think that's right. So you notice this, if first, is the opposite of if not first. So we can split these up into 2 separate conditional branches. So that's 1, and then now this condition is going to change. Going to get rid of a level of indentation. Is that right? Okay, so I have end if there, and then I can delete this one. And then eliminate one level of indentation. And then this condition is going to change. I think I don't need this condition at all because I was going to say if any IP is not IP not. But that's, we only really need the winding number check, whether we're going up or going down. Because if our pixel hasn't moved, then this is going to be 0. So I think I can get rid of this too and get rid of a second level of indentation. I think that should work. No, it didn't. So it's first. Because IP0 is uninitialized. Is this right? I'm really not sure at this point. There we go. So this is for line segments. I'm not sure how portable this is. I think depending on what compiler flags you use, you might get you might get some sort of compiler warning or error that IP0 is uninitialized here. So I think I want to initialize this just to be safe. It doesn't really matter what its value is because there is a guard with this first logical condition. So first starts out as true. So we never hit this on the first iteration through the loop until after we set it to false here, and then we hit it the second time. And at that point, IP0 is initialized to some correct value, not just the 0 that I initialized that I didn't have before. So I think that is good for line segments now. Let me just double check because I added like one line of code. Let me run all my unit tests, and while that's running, I'm going to refill my coffee, so I'll be back in like 1 minute. All right, we're back. Hey, all of those tests passed. We are so back. So we did that for line segments. Now let's do it for splines. think I can delete that. Let's see if those still pass. Okay. Yeah, I think I'm good with this. I think this can be a commit. Yeah, this is probably about as much as I can reduce the nested indentations, so I might break this into separate lines. This one is okay now. This one used to be going past my 80 character standard margin they like to start wrapping at, but this one is too long. So, and I think that's the only line that's too long. We're up to 82 characters. It's so close. I think a little bit of overflow is fine there. And then the same thing here. Okay, I think that can be a commit. Right, now for the hard part of today's stream, I want to try to optimize the winding canvas. And instead of like scanning the entire canvas to fill one glyph, I only want to scan the bounding box of that glyph. So that might be a little bit tricky. We'll see. This passed already for Ubuntu. I think we're good to go. All right, so let's optimize that. So this is the to-do note. I don't want to allocate my winding canvas to like the size of the whole canvas. I want it to be just the bounding box of this glyph. So then, yeah, I kind of have to change the way that translations are handled, because right here I translate all of the glyph coordinates. So x is the coordinates from the glyph. First of all, they have this T transformation, which transforms compound glyph components. And then there's another transformation here that translates things for like advancing by one character every time you draw a character. That's X. And then for Y, if you draw like separate lines, the Y handles the separate lines. So I don't want to translate here, because that X will carry on to the pixel coordinate, which is P as a real number, or IP rounded to the nearest integer pixel index. So I don't want to translate those, and then this index will be different, because I want to index locally within the glyph's bounding box, not globally within the whole canvas. So that's all going to change. And then once I get to the end of this loop, when I start filling in the contours right here, instead of drawing a pixel, this isn't going to loop through the entire canvas anymore. This is going to loop through just the bounding box, but then I'm going to have to apply the translation here instead of at the beginning where I'm applying the translation right now. So a lot of stuff is going to change, so that makes this a little bit tricky. But then, like, instead of this huge doubly nested loop for every character where we loop through the entire canvas, we're only going to loop through the bounding box of the glyph. So it should be more efficient. Not that efficiency is really a problem. Like, let's take a look at how fast this takes to run. Like if we run this test win, it's going to try to render every font that I have installed on Windows, and it takes a while mainly because it's writing large ppm files on my slow hard disk drive. So if I actually don't write files, if I render the pixels in memory but just don't export them to a file, that will give us a good sense of like how fast this algorithm is. So if I go to my specimen subroutine and just comment out the ppm export, and rerun this, this should just fly. It's actually not super fast. I think reading the TTF file, is this still running magic? I think it's still running magic. Yeah, so now it fails because magic can't run. Let's go back to this and let's just not run magic. Yeah, so now it's flying through pretty fast. It's not like instantaneous. I think I might want to benchmark this. Yeah, and yeah, let's not stop when there are errors, because this should also fix the crash, where it's crashing because there's no bounds checking on the winding number, and if your glyphs are outside of your canvas, this will crash. But if our winding canvas is the bounding box of the glyph, this shouldn't crash, or we should be able to fix it easier. But yeah, this isn't instantaneous, so I don't want a benchmark that takes like 2 or 3 minutes to run. I want something that's a little bit faster, but still non-trivial. So I'm going to kill that. I'm going to forget the uppercase TTF extensions. And then what if I only loop through the glyphs or the fonts that start with A? How long does this take? Actually, how long does it take? I want to use the time function so that I can know. I think that's not enough files. It's only 5 files. So let's try A and B. And maybe I'll do a few more files alphabetically. So that still might not be enough. Okay, there's only one more file there, bond shrift. What does bond shrift look like? I don't know, doesn't matter. Let's do A, B, C, and D. Okay, I think that's a decent benchmark, 25.3 seconds. I actually want to take a screenshot of that. Yeah, could just save a text file, but sometimes I just like to do screenshots. So we will remember how long that benchmark took to run. I'm going to move this off into my other monitor, but I'll bring it back if I need to refer to it. First of all, does it always take 25 seconds? There's going to be some statistical variation here, so I'm going to run it at least a second time. Seems to be about as fast as before, but it might be like plus or minus a couple seconds. Okay, so that was now 22 seconds instead of 25. I'm going to run it a third time. So 25, 22. If I was really being rigorous, I would like record these runtimes in a spreadsheet so I could get a sense of like the average runtime and the standard deviation. Because if you run one benchmark that takes 25 seconds and then you change something and run it again and it takes 22 seconds, can you say that your new code is faster? Or was that just the statistical variation? What you should really do is run like a t-test to see if it's significant compared to the standard deviation and the number of samples that you're doing. But that's kind of overkill for a side project. So yeah, let's just say, can I scroll up to the last one? It's somewhere around like 22 to 25 seconds. Best case scenario, 22 seconds, let's say. Did I scroll past it? Corbel. So we're on the C's. There are just a lot of C's. Maybe I can't scroll up that far. Arial. Okay, there it is. Yeah, so I want a screenshot of this one because this is like the best case scenario. So best case scenario, 22 seconds, and let's see if we can beat that by optimizing this. So I have a screenshot of this now. That's going to be the benchmark that we try to beat. Now we're gonna have to change the way that a bunch of translations work, and this will probably break the tests. I think it's going to shift things by maybe like plus or minus 1 pixel horizontally and vertically. It might change the vertical translations because it depends on how you round. This is adding an integer to a real number, and then this like isn't rounded until later. So if we round these to integers differently, we might get a slightly different result by like plus or minus 1 pixel. And that'll break the tests. It's okay, we can improve it if it does. But the goal now is to optimize and not necessarily care about breaking tests if it's only, as long as it's only 1 pixel. So I want to not translate here. Okay, all I've done in my Fortran source is like commented out the ppm export. Because I want to benchmark the rendering, I don't want to benchmark the file export. That's a separate concern. Okay, so I don't want to translate here. But then I want to translate somewhere else later. Maybe we can do this in 2 steps. Maybe we can change the translations, but keep this allocated to the whole canvas. It might not be safe. We might get a bunch of things that crash. Now, these coordinates are not translated. So this index doesn't really need to be into a whole canvas sized array, it just needs to be a glyph bounding box sized array. But maybe we'll do that as a second step. And then we have the same thing for splines. And now, down here, instead of drawing a pixel here, we want to translate this. This is going to be ix plus x naught and iy plus y naught. So I think that should be kind of the same. It might be off by like 1 pixel. So before we do a benchmark, let's just look at the one Noto Sans specimen. And it crashes. Yeah, so I think we do need to do this all as one step. Because your glyph bounding box isn't necessarily positive numbers, so I have to allocate this differently. And that means I need to know the bounding box of these coordinates. Now, glyphs have these things called like xmin, ymin, xmax, xmax, but those are like untransformed bounding boxes. So there are bounds for like the entire TTF, but then there are also bounds for each individual glyph, and those are read here. But those are untransformed. So the problem is there's this T transformation which could change your bounding box, and you can't in general get the new bounding box by just transforming the old bounding box. You have to actually look at each individual point, because if you like rotate a square, the bounding box isn't like cropped to the square anymore. You're going to get like a diagonal box inside of a larger axis aligned box. So I think the right thing to do is just check every point. So we can do that. I think I need some variables. Yeah, I want to have bounding box local variables. So xmin, ymin, xmax, ymax. And then after we transformed, we can get the transformed bounding box. That's x, and then there's y. Y is the second component. But these are real numbers, and then I want integers. So just to be safe for integers, I think I want to like subtract 1 from the min and add 1 to the max. And will this compile? I might get a warning about casting. Yeah. So I want to cast these somehow. Do I want int or n int? I think I want n int, and then I'm adding or subtracting 1 anyway, so it should be safe. Will that work? Okay, so it compiles at least, and that's all I wanted. Now instead of allocating the winding canvas to the whole canvas, I want my winding canvas to be just the current glyph bounding box. And it's actually not going to be a zero-based indexing. Like if xmin is negative, I want to be able to index from a negative number. So from xmin to xmax, and then from ymin to y max. Let's see what happens there. Yeah, now this loop, we're not going to loop through the canvas anymore, we're just going to loop through the bounding box. That ran, didn't crash. Let's see if it's right. Let's go. Wait. Oh, yeah, I'm not exporting a file. Yeah, I had a pop-up in another window. Let me bring that back. Yeah, so it says ppm doesn't exist because I commented out the specimen export so that I can benchmark just this algorithm and not the file export. Because of course the file export is slow. So let's bring that back temporarily to see if this is close to being correct. Again, if it's like shifted by 1 or 2 pixels, I don't really care. Oh, okay. Yeah, so I have part of the queue up here because, and I have like every letter actually up here in this corner, because we fill in the glyph in one part and I translated that, but I forgot to translate the outline when I render that part. So we have to look at like every single draw pixel call. So now this has to be translated. And this one too. And these are commented out, so I'm not going to fix these. These are going to be broken. Who cares? So we need to update those draw pixel calls. It's going to be IP plus X naught, Y naught. I think I can copy and paste that because I think they're all the same. Some of these are commented, so I'm skipping those. And I think that should fix the outlines now. There we go. So you can see the random untranslated outlines have disappeared from this region of the canvas. And then it's kind of hard to see, but all of the glyphs got slightly thicker because the points that are on the outline might not be filled by the filling part of the algorithm. So when we render the outline, that could add a border of like 1 pixel around the filled interior. So these all got like a little bit more bold. So yeah, I think that's correct. That's probably going to break the tests, but that's like a secondary concern. Now I want to see, did this actually make anything faster? Maybe not, maybe it's a wash. That's the point of benchmarking. We'll find out whether this helped or not. So I want to comment out the export again. And then let's rerun that benchmark. Remember, it took like 22 seconds the last time we ran it, so let's see how fast it is now. It might be a wash, I don't know. I think it might be a little bit faster. I forgot to time it, but it did seem faster. So I have to add the time command so that I know how long this takes. All right, we more than doubled the speed there. We went from like 22 seconds. Remember, sometimes it took like up to 25 seconds. Now it takes 9 seconds. Let's see how repeatable that is. again, about 9 seconds. Let's do it one more time. All right, I think I'm satisfied with that. We don't even have optimization compiler flags. So let's see how fast can this get. Let me edit my C make lists. I think I want to have an option for whether I compile, debug, or release, but for now, I'm just kind of hard code everything. Yeah, the warnings can be the same, but for this stuff, I want to get rid of that, and I want to add O3, optimize. It doesn't really seem like it changed much. It got slower. How did it get slower? That was weird. That's not what I expected. I'm timing the compilation. So when you compile with optimization, it actually takes longer to compile, but then it runs faster. But my timing, it's including the compilation time too. So that's why it takes longer when I added optimization. Okay, that time it was faster. It was like 7 seconds, but it shouldn't have really recompiled anything because I've compiled like 3 times in a row now. Yeah, so let's add the export back in. Let's double check this one more time. Let's add those checks back in. Let's look at this. It looks correct. Let's run the unit tests. These might be broken because I think it might shift things by like 1 pixel in any direction. Yeah, those are broken. Let's convert those ppms to PNGs. I think I can close like all of these windows. That might have been a mistake. Windows Photos app might take a while to warm up. Okay, that wasn't too long. So this looks okay. This looks okay. The diff is probably going to be like 1 pixel around the border. Maybe not on every side of the glyph, but probably just in like one side of the glyph in the direction that it was translated. Well, we're going to add a pixel on one side and then delete a pixel on another side. So there probably will be diff pixels on both sides. Maybe horizontally, maybe vertically, maybe both. So the test specimens look okay. Let's look at the diffs. Those should be next. Here's a diff. Don't see any diff pixels. Maybe that one passed. It's from right now. Well, let me clear out this directory because I think that might be an outdated diff. Then let's rerun the tests and then reconvert to PNGs. Okay, there were 5 test failures, so Ubuntu must have failed somewhere. Although I couldn't see a diff pixel anywhere. Might be like one pixel somewhere. Okay, I see them. Yeah, so it's like one pixel. And if that's the only difference that we did by optimizing things so it's like 2 to 3 times as fast as it used to be, I think that's worth it. There's 1 pixel on the 4. There are a few pixels along the border of the 5 and the 7 and the 9. So what is different in Computer Modern? Where are the magenta pixels? I actually can't see them anywhere. Oh, wait, no. Felt like the matrix text disappeared. I just forgot where it was. Where is the diff? What is different? I cannot see it. I looked at like every glyph in here. Like the background is fine. I can't see it. I'll have to like search for it in GIMP or something. I don't know how to like find a magenta pixel in any automated way. Yeah, so Bodoni, we saw these. That's okay. Where are the other diffs? What do you do in Windows Photo Viewer? Where are my other diffs? I'm trying to arrow key through them. Okay, here we go. In my unit tests, I should probably have like a count of the failed or the different pixels so that I know if it's like just 1 pixel or a row of pixels or a whole bunch of pixels. So this seems okay. It's just like 1 pixel in an A here and there. It's always the same one. That's interesting. But not, okay, in the high resolution A, it's in a different place. That makes sense, because when you scale the resolution, you change which things get rounded differently. I think that's okay. Here I see 1 diff and 1 diff. But again, it looks pretty good. I think that I can approve that. And finally, Ubuntu, what changed? Okay, there it is. I couldn't find that one earlier, but there's the diff in Ubuntu. So let's look at Computer Modern again, because I couldn't find the diff in Computer Modern. I think it might just being colorblind and not seeing the contrast between magenta and blue. I don't see anything there. It's the only place I have blue text. I think anywhere else the contrast should be pretty good. Although maybe not against a blue background. Does anybody see it? I can't see a magenta pixel. I'm gonna look like an idiot if somebody is watching this and is like, oh, you scrolled past it 10 minutes ago. Sorry, man, I can't see it. I need chat assistance. Where is the diff? There it is. Is that the only one? I think I want a count of how many pixels are different. I think that's the only one in the lowercase k. It's the only one I can see. Man, that was hard to find. So, should be able to count those pretty easily. That's in my library. Weird. That should help us spot and count differences. Oh, there were 2 pixels that changed in Computer Modern. I can't find the second one. This isn't even, yeah, this is up to date. Okay. No idea where the second one. This is just 1 pixel. I don't know where the other one is. I really can't be bothered to find it. I've spent enough time zooming in and panning around this image. So that had 2 differences. Ubuntu had 7 pixels. Garamond had 7 pixels. Bodoni had 45 because that had like the 5 and the 7, where there was a row of several pixels that changed. Like if we look at that again, yeah, Bodoni had like all these pixels. So this had 45, and that was the biggest difference out of all the tests. So I think I can approve those. And maybe I want to do that as a separate commit. I want to do the source change, have a broken test, and then have a separate commit as a record of like this commit changed a test. And then I think I'm going to end the stream soon, because this is about all I wanted to do today. So that's one commit that's going to break the tests, and then we should be able to see the CI badge change. And I want to get something else started running. I want to try like every Windows font again, because this should have fixed some of the crashes. Let me undo a bunch of stuff here, because I want to do every TTF file here, instead of just the ones that start with A, B, C, or D, and then uncomment this too. Let's let it stop when it hits an error, because I think this should at least reduce the number of crashes, if not entirely eliminate them. I think Corbelli is still gonna error out and stop the script, because that has it has like a weird file size that's not divisible by 4 bytes, so my checksum verification fails. But I think that should be like the only thing that fails. It should be relatively soon because it's towards the front of the alphabet. Corbelli starts with a C. Ran. Did it do Corbelli? Am I exporting anything? I'm not running magic. So I want to run magic to convert the ppms to PNGs so that I can see them. And yeah, now we have PNGs getting populated. Okay, it didn't run. Okay, it runs the uppercase ones first, because uppercase is always alphabetically before lowercase. So this might take a while to get to the one that fails, but at least we're not seeing any crashes yet. This should fail because we haven't updated the unit tests for the rounding difference yet, so that fails. You see the CI badge is not updated. There can be some lag there. It should update eventually. CI is not passing, GitHub. Come on, man. I know it's not passing. We have an X here. There should be an X here. How long does it take to update? These are still running locally. That's cool. How long does this badge take to update? What the fuck, GitHub? So 3 minutes ago. Should really not take that long for the badge to update. What if I try another browser? Is this like some weird browser caching thing? No, Firefox also says it's passing. Well, I guess let's let these run, and then let's look at the badge later. It should update eventually. So let's look at some of these PNGs. So the missing glyph thing is, this is a Noto font, which is specifically for Armenian. So this Armenian font does not have characters defined for Latin characters. So that's why we get these tofu boxes. But if you go to a different Noto font, which does have Latin characters, everything is cool. So that's why that happens. But as far as the ones that do render, they all look good. And these used to crash because the font name is overflowing the canvas. And that used to crash because like my winding number was only allocated to that canvas. But now it actually renders correctly. Yeah, that makes sense because if you look at the code here, where we actually draw the pixel, we loop through the bounding blocks of the glyph. So this is guaranteed to not crash by overflowing the winding number bounds. And then when we call draw pixel has bounds checking built into it. So if we try to draw a pixel that's outside the canvas, there's bounds checking here to prevent that. So this renders correctly and it doesn't crash, even though part of this glyph is inside the canvas and part of it is out. It still works, and this is the way that I would expect it to work. I think so. This is overflowing to the right. I should check if it works if I'm overflowing to the left. Like if I start a glyph on this side that's outside of the canvas, I think that should work too. But I'm not sure because my specimens basically guarantee that you can't do that. And these all look correct. There are no weird artifacts where like anything shoots out to infinity and overfills too many pixels. Let's check back on that CI badge. And okay, yeah, so Corbelli finally failed. And then if I comment this out, this should let the tests continue running even if one of them doesn't work, because I can't verify the checksum for Corbelli. I might fix that eventually, or I might just stop working on this project because there's not that much left to do. Let's check on that CI badge. It still says passing. I know it's not passing. This was 7 minutes ago. What about Edge? I never use Edge. Edge also thinks this is passing. Weird. So, like I said, I'm probably going to start slowing down with streaming, at least for this project. Uh, I might continue to tinker with this cali library a little bit, but if I do, that might be more off stream than on stream. So this is sort of like the conclusion of this project. I think this is about as far as I wanted to take it. I think if I can render fonts like this, then I can probably render anything. Because like this has all kinds of weird splines that go in different directions. So if I can do this bug-free, I can probably do anything. something weird there. I think these are looking pretty good, if I do say so myself. What's the difference between Cascadia Code and Cascadia Mono? Other than the palette, which I'm changing, the fonts look exactly the same. The hell is the difference? Emojis. I can't handle emojis, so that's to be expected. I can't handle Arabic. I can handle Devanagari. Not sure about Hebrew. I haven't really tested CJK, Chinese, Japanese, or Korean. I probably can't handle Korean because like Korean isn't just left to right. You have like glyphs that are grouped into syllables, and then within a syllable, there's a combination of like horizontal offsets and vertical offsets. So I don't think I can handle that. Uh, Chinese and Japanese, maybe. I haven't tested it, so I don't know. I can handle Greek and Cyrillic. There's nothing weird about those languages compared to Latin. Yeah, I don't mean that like other languages are weird. I just mean that like they're different than Latin. So just because I've written code that works for Latin doesn't mean it works in general for every language. But like in terms of going from left to right, Cyrillic and Greek are the same as Latin, so I can handle those. Okay, so we got past the bad checksum. The script used to stop there because I had the set-e enabled. Now I commented out, so it keeps going. That's good, so we can see the other fonts that do work. And I think that Corbelli is the only thing that errors out with my library now. I think I'm supporting everything else in terms of like different CMAP formats and different compound glyph transformations. I think maybe there are like Unicode variation sequences that I can't handle. I can't remember if that errors out or if you just get unknown glyphs like this. Let's check back on that CI badge. Has it finally updated? No. What the fuck, GitHub? It's been 16 minutes now. Like, why is this not updating? You know it failed. This is the right repository. Fonts. Hey, Fern of Sigma, welcome back to the stream. Sorry I haven't reviewed your web scraper yet. I actually tried to run it, and then like, I think I have Python 3.8, but it required Python 3.11. So Pip complained about that. I'll try to take a look at the code, even if I can't run it, and give you a little feedback. So yeah, if you just tuned in, I'm sort of at the tail end of this project. I can fill in contours now, so instead of just an outline, we have glyphs that are filled in. That's one of the last big features that I wanted to do with this library, so this might be like my final stream, or at least I'm going to start slowing down with streaming on this project. You're using language features from 3.11. Yeah, that makes sense. I should just upgrade and get the latest Python. What was I doing? Yeah, so this is a different repository, but if I go to Cali, the current repository, this should say failing because the last test failed. But this is sort of like nice to have. Who really cares if there's a CI badge in the README? Yeah, so with this being possibly the final stream for this project, if you want to follow along as I continue to tinker with this off stream, feel free to watch this repository if you click the watch button. I don't really know what kind of notifications GitHub sends you, but yeah, you can click the watch button and I guess you'll get notifications somehow. So feel free to watch that. This link will be in the description if you're watching on YouTube. If you're watching on Twitch, there is a link to my GitHub repository or GitHub profile on my Twitch profile. And then if you go to my repositories, you can find Cali. So this is it. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe because I appreciate that type of feedback to let me know if I should keep streaming stuff like this or try a different project. I also updated the API slightly, so the code has changed and I've edited that issue accordingly. Oh, cool. Yeah, I'll take a look at that sometime. It has some neat type hints in a built-in TOML parser. Who was I looking at? I was looking at code where there were like type annotations in the Python, and I was like, huh, I didn't know you could do that in Python. I thought Python was like totally dynamically typed. I didn't know you could like actually go in and do types like with TypeScript versus JavaScript. Okay, this actually ran for every font on Windows. Is there anything else I wanted to do? I guess I want to update the tests. Okay, Python type annotations they're not checked at runtime. Wait, when are they checked? Is there like a linter? So this runs all of the Windows tests now. There's a special variable called type checking, which indicates if there's a type checker running, like, oh, my py, py right, py type. Okay, yeah. I don't do a whole lot of Python programming, so that's interesting to learn. I didn't know about those. So that is one commit. I think I want to update these tests because the unit tests are failing. Like I translated things differently just enough with rounding differences that there's like 1 pixel difference in all of these unit tests. So I think I want to update those tests. So Bodoni and Computer Modern, Garamond. What else do we have? Ubuntu and Noto Sans. So Noto Sans, and then finally Ubuntu. And now those tests should pass. Pyrite also implements LSP, so it plugs into NeoVim. Oh, that's cool. Okay, these tests pass now. Is the CI badge still not updated? I wonder if it like just takes an extra commit. Still says passing, but it's not passing. Like we have the X here, but this says passing and it's just like not updating even though it's been 20 minutes or something by now. So far it has helped me write code faster. Wouldn't have thought that a year ago. Yeah, I saw some discussion on like Twitter or something. Some guy was like, what's the point of type checking? Isn't that something that you could just catch with tests? Like, yeah, you can catch some type errors by just doing unit testing, but like you can't necessarily unit test all of your code, and that's where type checking can like catch things that unit testing won't catch. So uh, for myself, like I come from a background of mostly statically typed languages like Fortran and C or C++. Uh, Python was one of the first programming languages that I learned, but I didn't really learn it very well, so I didn't understand the distinction of dynamic typing versus static typing. But for me, I really like having compile time type checking. I think I would make a lot of mistakes without it. Okay, so let's update these tests, or just commit it and push it. So these should finally pass now. And then I think I'm going to make one more small commit to update my semantic version number, and then I'll probably end the stream for today. So I've now given up on watching this badge change from passing to failing because this should pass the tests again, finally. Okay. Seems like that passed. Yeah, so those passed now remotely. Now I have this semantic version number. The only way you really see it is when you run, it says cali 0.0.3. I think we're at like a stable point where I want to update this to 0.4. When I pull up my error panel plugin, there's a whole list of errors which just tell me what's wrong instead of wasting time flipping on a terminal in NeoVim and running the code and then diagnosing ambiguous error messages. Yeah, like the sooner that you can see an error, the better. So if you can have like an error at some compile time phase, even though Python doesn't have a compile time, then that's better than waiting until you run to find out that there's a mistake. So yeah, let's update this from 0.0.3 to 0.0.4. and this might be kind of stable for a while. I'm not going to call it 1.0. I'm probably the only person using this library, so it doesn't really matter. So I think that's about it. Yeah, let's end this by just scrolling through a few more fonts. This is a really weird one. This is a Microsoft symbol font where like it's substituting Greek characters for Latin characters. So like I'm trying to typeset A's and E's and R's, but it has like a Greek alpha, an epsilon, and a rho. This isn't the way that fonts in Unicode should work. This is like an abuse of the CMAP table. When every piece of software uses zero ver, yeah. There was some controversy about that with Rust. Like the Rust cargo default is that when you initialize a package, it initializes to like 0 point something. And some people were saying like the default should be 1 because a lot of people just never update it. I don't know. I think the default is correct. I think you shouldn't update 1 until like you really have solid documentation and testing and probably more than one person using it. But that's just my opinion. Everybody has a different idea of how semantic versioning should work. Really, it's 0 because I'm reserving the right to totally change the API. So, like, I might completely break the way that this works. Yeah, I think you're right. I think it should be 0.1.0. I actually made a mistake, and I've been incrementing the patch number instead of the minor number, but I think it should be the way that you mentioned. Oh, I'm kind of curious what other languages I can do. Uh, who cares, right? It's alpha. Yeah, it's alpha. It's pre-alpha, so it's not super important. But you're right. It should be 0.1. Because it's a slippery slope if you start breaking the semver rules. Like if cargo in Rust changed its default to be 1.0 as the initial version, that's like chaos because nobody has a stable API when they start a project. So I think that's the wrong default. So it's better to follow the semantic versioning rules verbatim, even if other people break those conventions. I want to try some other fonts or some other non-Latin languages, and the best way to do that is to just Google. I know I can do Greek, but let me just do that as a demo. When I make my project 1.x, I'm prepared to get flogged by you broke PEP 8. Oh yeah, Python has like some really strict standards for style. Should be able to typeset this. As long as the font supports it. So some fonts don't have glyphs for Greek characters, but as long as I do like a Noto font or a general purpose Noto font, this should render. I think Calibri should work too. So let me rebuild and then rerun with a specific font. It's like the unwritten rule of the underworld. PEP8. If you break it, you get clocked in the mug. My quotes or my spacing is messed up. There we go. Where's the PNG? This should be it, right? Yeah, so there's Greek. I can handle Greek. I don't know what all Calibri supports. So, like if I try something less common like Georgian, I don't think this is going to work with Calibri. So we're probably going to get unknown glyphs. Oh, Calibri has Georgian. I'm surprised. Will that refresh? Come on, refresh. There we go. Yeah, so I can handle Georgian text. I can't read Georgian, so this could be totally wrong and I wouldn't know it. That's like the main reason I'm not going to support every single language, because like I can't really spot errors if I can't at least read it. And like things look different, yeah, because it's a different font. Like here we have like a gap at the bottom of this glyph. Maybe Google is messing that up. Maybe it's truncating. I think it's like truncating these descenders. But like other than font differences, I think that's the same glyph. So I think this looks correct for Georgian. Yeah, I can handle Georgian. I think Python 3.9 added structural subtyping, kind of like traits in Rust. Might make it more bearable for you. I don't even know what that is. That might be beyond my current level of Rust knowledge. So Georgian seems to work. I probably can't handle Hebrew. Like I'm sure I'll at least mess up the left to rightness of Hebrew. So I have no idea what's going to happen here. Does Calibri even have Hebrew? I don't know. Okay, Calibri is a pretty good font. It seems to have a lot of languages. But I'm probably going to have it backwards. Come on, refresh. I need like a photo viewer with an explicit refresh option, because like just scrolling back and forth doesn't really. There we go. I think it's backwards. Let's try to get these both in view at the same time. Yeah, the character that's on the right here is on the left here, because I can't handle right to left languages. So this is wrong. I'm pretty sure I can't handle Korean because it's like they're horizontal offsets sometimes. And then I don't know about Japanese or Chinese. I'm not sure if I can handle those. But yeah, I think that's about it for this stream. If you define a dummy class with a dummy method and the type checker checks if the object you passed has the same methods as that dummy. Oh, you don't have to dance with inheritance. Yeah, inheritance is a feature that I don't think I've ever used it. Maybe I've like maintained a little bit of code that uses inheritance, but I don't think I've written code myself from scratch that does that. So that's like a little bit beyond my object-oriented abilities. Anyway, yeah, thanks for tuning in. I think I'm going to end the stream here. So I really appreciate all the viewers. and I will catch you next time, whenever that happens to be. You always use composition. Oh yeah, composition is like an alternative to inheritance. All right, I'll catch you next time. Bye.